for the first time in a long time, no Grand Prix. So we are very excited, to see a lot of the Grand Prix, a lot of the Formula One racing action in May, and it won't be just any action. It will be our favorite Sprint Grand Prix weekend action. Oh yay! Yes, we are very excited over here because finally, after two race introductions to the races that never really happened, only the virtual races that we have done, we are now going to go, to the proper venue. There will be so much action. I'm sure you guys will be loving it here in Welcome to Miami. Oh yay! The proper tropical vibes. I'm sure you can hear that for the proper tropical Grand Prix of the Formula One calendar. Obviously hosted by this amazing Miami International Autodrome, which is absolutely a great track and which we cannot wait, to be again racing, and we definitely wanna be lifting some shiny golden Formula One Grand Prix winner trophies over here because there's basically nothing better than winning in a place like Miami. And in May, the Sprint Grand Prix weekends, they won't obviously stop. I will also be racing at the same time as obviously last year we were also doing the sprinting in Miami, but when we move over to Canada, which is the proper kind of the polar Grand Prix, should we call it, much colder than Miami, so definitely different challenges. It's also Sprint Grand Prix weekend, kind of taking over from what used to be the traditional, the final three sprint weekends, right? Obviously, Austin and Brazil and of course Qatar, so probably replacing directly Austin, and that is great, because I think we will see a lot of very exciting races, especially as there are lots of news with the new directives, as we are still kind of tweaking these 2026 rules, and again, it might seem a little bit weird, right? Why that is, but really a lot of the very good reasons to make sure that what should have been, what will be round 4, the proper round 4, but what should have been the round 6 of the 2026 FIA Formula One Championship, the Miami Grand Prix, so that it can be as competitive, of course, as possible, but also as fair as possible in terms of the competition. And I believe we are Scuderia Ferrari, this is our month, to really lay claim to the championship, because we really want to be competing for the championship and be winning it, of course, after relatively long drought, and especially from June we will have another new way, for example, of the measurements of the energy output, especially the engine output, which again will favor us, just like not having maybe the two races where we might not have been that competitive might favor us. But one of the new changes, one of the new regulations that are related to starts might hurt us a little bit. So in this exclusive race reaction from the tropics, from wonderful sunny Miami, we will tell you everything about it on this Scarlet Scuderia Red Retina iMac. And on this Ferrari Red iMac, we will also take a look at Miami International Autodrome. We will tell you everything there is to know about this amazing track, and then you will pretty much have lots of videos, almost 10 of them over here, to enjoy this Formula One Grand Prix weekend, this second Sprint Grand Prix weekend, of course, of the season, and it will be interesting, to see exactly what will happen there, right? So over here, if we take a look at how the situation looks like, especially with the directives, so we can start off with that in our lovely new fashion over here, as we will also be chasing and obviously racing to win the sprint, the Miami Sprint, for the very first time. We want to win our second Miami Grand Prix over here, after we obviously managed to win it in 2024 when we played last season. And it's great to see Miami for the 5th, of course, year over here, since 2022, 5th consecutive year. And the great thing about some of the long-term contracts about the Formula One is there will be at least 15 more Miami Grand Prix, many sprints as well. Oh yeah, until 2041. I'm sure that will be extended beyond as well. So over here, let's start off with some of the news. So obviously the drivers, they've been keeping themselves sharp, doing, for example, like me, the virtual esports racing, or going to other categories, mostly the sports cars. They prove to be very popular with the drivers, which is quite interesting. And it's quite interesting when, for example, the drivers come into the sports car categories, that they are used to, just like you can see me always racing, right? Of course, braking with the left foot, which gives you the additional, extra pace advantage over the other, drivers who, for example, very often brake with the right foot. So you cannot, juggle between the left and the right foot, at the same time. So, definitely that's also what gives the edge. That's what makes, Formula One drivers the best in the world. But yeah, with regards to, us as Scuderia Ferrari, we put in obviously lots of effort. We have done some testing for Pirelli, especially for the wet tires. There will be some changes according to the new regulations. We're getting to them right now. There will be basically, increased temperature over here, of the tire blankets. So if we have a wet race, which is quite a strong possibility in both Miami and in Montreal, the host of the Canadian Grand Prix in May. So, there's quite a high possibility that, we will run across some of the wet sessions, that will ensure that obviously, their drivers don't have, for example, too cold of the tires. But the biggest issue, the biggest thing with the new regulations, you will think that they should kind of be set in stone, right? It's usually quite unusual, we should say, kind of using the oxymoron over here, that you set the new rules and then you change them, or keep changing them throughout the season. It's actually highly controversial, but a lot of it has to do to ensure that everybody is following the rules the right way so that it is fair, but also there are some safety concerns like the Oliver Behrman crash, right? So the second introduction of the new directive, which basically means the new regulation or the new rule for the F1 2026, is that at the start, if, for example, you bog down, which is happening to lots of, the drivers, especially the Red Bulls, but also Mercedes being very poor off the line this year, but you can see McLaren, surprisingly with the same engine, managed to get off the line really well. Scuderia Ferrari, of course, we are like rockets, right? Exactly. So to us, this will hurt us a little bit, but basically it is all down to the fact that, let's say, I believe it was the Colapinto who had to avoid, one of, I believe, the stationary cars. I don't know if it was a Racing Bull, don't recall, but you could have really nasty collision, right? And the last thing you want is the drivers getting injured. We are lucky to have Behrman racing in Miami, that he didn't, for example, break but only bruise the ankle. So what will be happening is that if you do not get a good start, there is a certain limit. So the MGUK, which is the motor generator unit, the kinetic one, normally you had the MGUH, right, up until 2025. So once we have this split of 50% combustion, 50% electric, it does mean that if you run out of the electric power, right, with the combustion, engine, you would only run out of the power if you don't have the fuel. So it's it's unlikely to happen unless, you underfuel the car or use the fuel too much, and at pretty much, the end of the races, you would be running out of the fuel. That would be pretty much the only way you could lose power. But with the electric battery, the charge constantly goes up and down, right? And if you just simply drain the battery, have no charge, you lose up to 500 horsepower, which of course can have a drastic effect on the differences in speed. So to combat that, we had the motor generating unit based on the heat. So of course, the components, they are running quite hot, right, around 90 degrees Celsius or even more, like the engine over 100 degrees Celsius. So the MGUH always help you, to kind of spur up the turbo, because again, remember, we are still using the turbos over here. The powertrain is quite complicated. No wonder Honda is struggling with it. Audi a little bit, Red Bull, of course, in collaboration with Ford, and it is only pretty much over here, up to us, right, as obviously Scuderia Ferrari over here. Yes, we will take a short break, so stay tuned. And welcome back, of course, from our break over here, because obviously we have our special fan Angel Amy over here watching our race introduction over here. So yes, going back to the second directive over here, of course, the issue at the start is that you could bog down, as we said, and as a result, of course, you wouldn't be able, to again, go very fast. And of course, if you've gotten a great start, there could be a big speed difference. So that MGU-H, because it's been taken away, which obviously was used up to spur up the turbo, what will happen is that the MGU-K will now be able to deliver, more of the output of the energy, which wasn't the case, prior. And of course, there will also be flashing lights at the back of the formulas, so that you will, for example, not get into this terrible situation where, for example, you will just bog down and the cars will, hit you, to ensure that, yes, you will still not have a competitive start, but, for example, you want to be going to almost a stall, right? So that is an important change. But maybe the two biggest changes, that we have so far is very simple, related to basically how, the energy is deployed, especially from the battery. So now, for the qualifying, so the harvesting, output has now been officially decreased from 8 megajoules to 7 megajoules, and of course, that output can also, go even less, to basically ensure, that all of the cars, can tackle the qualifying with as much energy as possible. Now, what has also happened is that, and this is actually great news for Scuderia Ferrari, is that the 250, the kilowatt limit of what we call the super clipping, right, where basically the car loses the power at the end of the straight. Now we will have a chance to go to 350 kilowatts. So that will definitely, help, with regards, to not getting, for example, bugged down or overtaken, especially by the silver cars at the end of the straight. So these are the biggest changes that we are definitely looking forward to seeing how exciting the Miami Sprint Grand Prix weekend is going to be over here. And now I think, we can take a look at the Miami International Autodrome, which is absolutely fantastic track. We will introduce it to you in the hot lab, and of course then in the red hot lab you can then see just how fast you can go through this amazing track. Again, we wish that the F126 was available so that we could race it, with the all new cars, but all the indications are, especially at this moment, that is going to take a while. So we will still do the hot lab with the F125 cars over there, but I hope that you guys will be loving it nevertheless. So here, let me take a look. Let's turn around our Scuderia Red Retina iMac over here. And here you have the Miami International Autodrome, right? So you can see the beautiful, 50 stars of the United States flag over here. And of course, 3 states now have the Formula One race. There was actually a thought of adding more races, especially with the Middle East being so uncertain. Even though Stefano Domenicali, the ex-Ferrari boss, has poured cold water on, for example, let's say, having a race in California or New York, which again could be great places, or let's say Indianapolis, right? To have Formula One, I wouldn't be against that. Again, 24 races will be a good limit, but we can understand why we don't want to have one particular country hosting so many races, right? So over here, you can see Miami joining in 2022, of course, 57 laps, lap record 1 minute 29.708. We will definitely be challenging that. Lap record is by Verstappen there, and the race will go over 300 kilometers. Now here is how the track is. So the Miami International Autodrome, you can see the Hard Rock Stadium is right up here, which is why it features the kind of 90-degree like turns over here all around, and the start-finish straight is relatively short, so that will be a bit of an issue for us if we don't manage to qualify on pole position or a little bit further back, because again, it will be relatively easy for the pole sitter. Who knows who that will be, of course, especially Antonelli was already struggling with his starts, but nevertheless, he should be able, whoever is starting from the front row, is unless you have a terrible start, you should be able to keep it into turns 1 and 2. There's this famous side of 2022 in the maiden race when Mick Schumacher crashed into the 4-time champion Sebastian Vettel, kind of Vettel's fault for closing it. But yeah, you can see, as you will see in the hot lap, that the track really narrows down over there, so it's hardly overtaking opportunities, but I believe there will be a straight mode over here on the start-finish straight, and then you have to really feather the throttle, going through the turns, it will be interesting, with the increased battery, how easy it will be to handle the cars around the sweeping, especially the turn 3, where, you definitely want to avoid the curb, trust me. And over here, going around the Hard Rock Stadium, here is where you can also then get a trophy, you will have that police escort, so we're definitely looking forward to that. And then turns 4 and 5 and 6, this is my specialty, really have to attack them 7, 6 gears, you can get so much time, and I'm absolutely mega over here as we go into the very famous Miami Marina, which of course is only painted, right? It's not a real marina, but it does feature, for example, the yachts you can go into, but there's no water. I mean, at least maybe they could have made it a swimming pool, but yeah, getting the right exit out of it, it is important to go on the throttle early, trust the car, trust the downforce, and obviously you will deploy lots of the battery and also the boost to overtake, because here there will be gondola going above you, right? So there's again lots of entertainment around Miami Gardens, and the turns 9 and 10 is a really quick thing. The car kind of the track kind of narrows down a little bit, but once you're heading to the end of the sector 2 to turn 11, that's a great overtaking opportunity. And again, after that, it will be interesting to see, what happens in Australia. We had a lot of, great moments, especially between George Russell and Charles Leclerc. Here, going through turns 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, that's like you have to feather the throttle through turns 1, 2, and 3, but kind of for much longer. And especially going into and underneath, the highway, it is very important to almost kiss the wall on the exit out of 14 and on the entrance into 15, and then avoid, that crest, right? So the car basically, is not airborne, so that you can then have a great exit out of the turn 16 into this back straight, which is a great overtaking opportunities. I had lots of great battles over here with obviously the other drivers, especially some of the villains like Verstappen and Alonso. We push them out. Come on, yeah, smiling side champion. You can definitely do that. And yeah, this is pretty much how you race it. So we cannot wait to see how well we can do. You can see over here the Miami track over here, how it looks like. This was for the F1 75 in Miami, and here is the record. So we've never won in Miami, and I definitely hope that will change. May again could be kind of like the transition month as we then start from June, where we really expect the title challenge from Scuderia Ferrari. If not, of course there will be big changes. There's the talk of Andrea Stella, the McLaren team principal, joining Scuderia Ferrari, but yeah, we will see how exactly that will go. But yeah, 0 wins, we definitely want to change that, at least get a sprint win and a win, for the first time in more than a year, which is really a travesty, considering how successful we as Scuderia Ferrari are. Charles Leclerc was on pole position before, so definitely we could add second pole to it. 0 fastest laps, but 3 podiums, so we almost guaranteed a podium. But given how competitive we are this year, that will be considered the bare minimum. So over here, that will be, of course, for us as Scuderia Ferrari. And now let's take a look over here at the Drivers' Championship. So it will be changing. Our next race reaction, it won't be like this way. Obviously, you've heard race introductions. We kind of repeated for the lucky 3rd time over here. And we hope that Andrea Antonelli, who's leading the Drivers' Championship in 2026 with 72 points, will lose the lead, but hopefully to Charles Leclerc. George Russell is on 63 points. Charles Leclerc is on 49 points. And there are a lot, 33 points on offer. So definitely, we have a chance to see a lot of the moves. Lewis Hamilton, 4th with 41 points for Scuderia Ferrari. It will be important to outscore Mercedes-Benz. If we can do this here at the 2nd Sprint Grand Prix weekend of the season and the 3rd Sprint Grand Prix weekend of the season, I think we will be good to go. 5th is then Lando Norris, the reigning champion for McLaren, 25 points. 6, Oscar Piastri, McLaren, 21 points. 7 is then Oliver Behrman, Haas, 17 points. Obviously, he will be racing. He bruised his ankle. Then we have 8, which is Pierre Gasly, Alpine, 15 points. 9, Max Verstappen, Red Bull with 12 points. It's so great to see Red Bull doing so badly, and we hope he stays there. And 10 is then Liam Lawson, Racing Bulls, 10 points. 11th, we then have the only rookie, Arvin Lindbergh, Racing Bulls, 4 points. Another competitor we will have to beat will be Isaac Hadjar from Red Bull Racing for 4 points. 13 is then Gabriel Bortoleto, Audi, 2 points. 14 Carlos Sainz Williams 2 points, 15 is then Esteban Ocon has only 1 point, given that Berman has 17. There's already a talk of Ocon leaving F1 altogether. You cannot get creamed by your teammate. That's a reality of Formula 1. But again, we are technically only 5 races in. And then of course we have 16, which is Franco Colapinto, Alpine 1 point, and then 17 Nico Hulkenberg, Audi. I definitely think he has a chance to get his first points. He's on 0 points. Same for 18 Alexander Albon Williams, 0 points. 19 is then Valtteri Bottas Cadillac, 0 points. 20 at Sergio Perez Cadillac, 0 points. 21st Fernando Alonso Aston Martin, 0 points. 22nd Lance Stroll Aston Martin, 0 points. Cadillac obviously the new team, and making their home debut. But I think just like Honda, they will simply not be able, to get any points. So this is the Drivers' Championship. That's how it looks like for the 2026-2026 season. And here is the 2026-2026 Constructors' Championship. Mercedes leading with 135 points. We are Scuderia Ferrari are second on 90 points. You can see the difference of 46 points over here. But of course, with the Sprint Grand Prix weekend, there are 58 points on offer. So we definitely want to be at least one, a standard Grand Prix points distance from Mercedes, because then it will be a proper fight for the Constructors' Championship. McLaren, a bit of an unknown because they did well in Japan, but maybe might have been track specific. Third, 46 points, but I think almost no chance of them already of repeating and getting the third Constructors' Championship in a row. Fourth is then Haas, 18 points. Fifth, Alpine, 16 points. And look, Red Bull Racing sixth. Only how the mighty have fallen with 16 points, not even getting the points break with Alpine. That's great to see. Seventh, Racing Bulls, 14 points, almost outscoring their original, the leading team. 8, Audi, 2 points. 9, Williams, 2 points. 10, Cadillac, 0 points. And 11, Aston Martin. Honda, of course, 0 points. I believe, they will stay at 0 points for the foreseeable future. But it would be great to see if some of the directives really make the whole field a bit more competitive. Again, this was the Constructors' Championship. You can see we definitely don't want the silver cars to run away with it. And this is the Drivers' Championship. And I believe Leclerc with Hamilton are very, very motivated to make Scuderia Ferrari the champions again. That's right. So over here, this was obviously our introduction over here to the Miami Grand Prix and the Miami International Autodrome. So hope you guys were loving it, and we cannot wait for the starting grid announcement, especially in our race where we hope to be on pole position for the Miami Grand Prix, because now, as we can discuss my amazing achievements, we've always been on pole position. Oh yay! That's right. So in total 3 pole positions. So again, Miami, for me personally, it's a great track, but I haven't always delivered on that pole promise, right? So I've said the 2 Grand Prix pole positions, 1 sprint pole position. I did manage to win the Grand Prix last year, even though I ran off the track at the end of the back straight, and of course, managed to recover in a beautiful, glorious Floridian sunshine. So I definitely want to add to that. Also, I have, the 2 fastest laps, over there, to my name. So again, it's only the race victories, and it is the same thing. When we look at the sprints, we also got on the fastest lap, but only finished 7th last year, because obviously Verstappen half spun us to the back of the field. So it will be very important to plant it on a pole position. Even though the weather could be kind of, it's not given that you will have all beautiful sunny races, on Saturdays and Sundays. It could be raining, especially during the qualifying. So we will definitely, have to challenge that. But we've gotten that pole position for the Miami Grand Prix in the wet conditions as well. So we should be all good to go. As I said, especially around the Miami Marina, we are super strong. So we will see how it goes, but I'm very excited, and I'm sure that you guys are excited too, to finally be racing. Finally, Formula 1 is back, and we will see in May, how much everything will change. It will be kind of like a restarted, the all new, brand new, super innovative 2026 season with the tweak rules. but they could make a big difference, and I hope you guys will all enjoy it. So definitely stay tuned over here. We will be showing you then the sprint qualifying, the sprint, the qualifying, the Grand Prix, and of course the reactions to both the sprint and the Grand Prix weekend. And I hope that we will be hearing some Italian national anthem for not Antonelli's, but this time the Ferrari's victories. We heard it twice, and it will be great if we hear it twice again, but this time for the Scarlet Ferrari wins. So are you ready to go racing? Of course you are, including obviously our biggest fan, Angel Amy, who must be loving this race introduction over here. So now you know everything about the Miami International Autodrome. This is Miami Grand Prix, definitely the highlight of the season. You can hear the wonderful tropical vibes. This is a proper tropical Grand Prix. So everybody, let's go racing!